Hi everyone, welcome to IGCSE Study Buddy, where you can revise biology topics from the Cambridge IGCSE syllabus. If you are enjoying these videos so far, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. In this video, you are going to learn Part 1 of Topic 19, Organisms and Their Environment. Let's first dive into energy flow. Energy flows through living organisms, starting with the sun. Plants use light energy from the sun to make their own food, storing it as chemical energy in their cells. Animals then eat the plants, gaining energy from them. This energy is passed on when animals are eaten by other animals. Eventually, energy is returned to the environment through decomposition. This flow of energy is vital for the survival and functioning of all living organisms. So the sun is the principal source of energy input to biological systems. Before we go any further, let's learn some important definitions. A producer is an organism that makes its own organic nutrients, usually using energy from sunlight through photosynthesis. A consumer is an organism that gets its energy by feeding on other organisms. A herbivore is an animal that gets its energy by eating plants. A carnivore is an animal that gets its energy by eating other animals. A decomposer is an organism that gets its energy from dead or waste organic material. Consumers may be classed as primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary according to their position in a food chain. A food chain shows the transfer of energy from one organism to the next, beginning with a producer. Here's an example of a simple food chain in a grassland ecosystem. In this food chain, the grass obtains energy from the sun and is consumed by the rabbit. The energy stored in the grass is transferred to the rabbit when it eats the grass. The fox then obtains the energy by preying on the rabbit. So, in a food chain, the arrows between each organism in the chain always point in the direction of energy flow from the food to the consumer. A food web is a network of interconnected food chains. In this example, the rabbit eats the grass, and the rabbit is then eaten by the fox. Also, a snail eats the grass, the thrush eats the snail, and the fox then eats the thrush. Two of these food chains have the same producer and top predator. They can be joined together into a food web. A trophic level is the position of an organism in a food chain, food web, or ecological pyramid. Each step in the food chain represents a different feeding level or trophic level. Energy is transferred from one organism to another as predators consume their prey. The energy flow continues as one organism becomes food for another organism at the next trophic level. The following are the trophic levels in the food webs, food chains, and ecological pyramids. Producers, we know that it's an organism that makes its own organic nutrients, usually through energy from sunlight through photosynthesis. Primary consumers are herbivores. They feed on producers or plants. Secondary consumers are predators that feed on primary consumers. Tertiary consumers are predators that feed on secondary consumers. And quaternary consumers are predators that feed on tertiary consumers. So in this example, the plant will be the producer. The grasshopper is the primary consumer. The mouse is the secondary consumer. The snake is the tertiary consumer. And the hawk is the quaternary consumer. Now, let's discuss the human impact on food chains and food webs in a habitat. Food webs are highly interconnected, and any changes in the population of one species can have ripple effects on other organisms within the food web. Many changes in animal and plant populations are caused by human activities. Overharvesting of food species. This disrupts the food chains because the organisms that eat these species won't have enough food to survive, leading to population declines. And the introduction of foreign species to a habitat. This creates competition for resources which can harm the existing species and disrupt the food chain. Both of these human-driven actions can significantly alter the balance of ecosystems. Let's look at an example of how the introduction of foreign species to a habitat can affect it. Let's say humans have introduced owls to this habitat to eat the grasshoppers, which say they consider to be pests and want to reduce its population. So if the population of grasshoppers decrease, the population of grass would increase as there are now fewer species feeding off them. The population of frogs and mice would decrease significantly as grasshoppers are their only food source. The population of thrushes would decrease slightly as they eat grasshoppers as well, but they have snails as another food source. So we can see that when one trophic level is damaged, all that follow are also impacted as the amount of food for them decreases. Now let's shift our focus to ecological pyramids. These pyramids are graphical representations that show feeding relationships of organisms at each trophic level. First, let's talk about pyramids of numbers. A pyramid of numbers shows the number of organisms in each trophic level of a food chain. For example, let's construct a pyramid of numbers from this food chain. Grass is eaten by grasshoppers, which are eaten by frogs, which are eaten by snakes. This is how the pyramid of numbers will look for this food chain, with the producers at the bottom and the consecutive consumers on top. There is plenty of grass, so the width of the bottom level will be long. Generally, the larger an individual organism is, the less of them there are. So as you go higher up the food chain, the animals get larger and so the width of the box gets smaller. A pyramid of numbers will not always give a pyramid shape. For example, if we consider this food chain, we have one tree, which is the producer. Then we have caterpillars, and moving up the chain, we have some birds. So in this case, the pyramid of numbers won't be pyramid shaped. This is because the tree is one large organism which has enough energy to support many smaller organisms, that is the caterpillars. A pyramid of numbers sometimes may be misleading. It may not depict the true amount of energy in each trophic level. If we look at this second example, it makes it feel as if there may not be enough producers to support the food chain. Next, what are pyramids of biomass? Biomass is the total dry mass of one animal or plant species in a food chain or food web. A pyramid of biomass shows the total mass of organisms in each trophic level of a food chain, rather than the number of organisms. Pyramids of biomass give a clearer picture of the amount of plant or animal material at each level of a food chain. A pyramid of biomass usually has a true pyramid shape as biomass and energy is lost at each level. A pyramid of biomass, therefore, is more useful as it gives an indication of the amount of energy being passed on at each stage of the food chain. For example, let's construct a pyramid of biomass and a pyramid of numbers from this food chain and compare both. Aphids feed on the oak tree and ladybirds feed on aphids. So, as you can see, if we glance at the pyramid of numbers only, it may appear as if there may not be enough producers to support this food chain. But if we look at the pyramid of biomass, in reality it is apparent that the oak tree has more than enough energy to support the food chain. So it's clearly more advantageous to use a pyramid of biomass rather than a pyramid of numbers to represent a food chain. Next, pyramids of energy. A pyramid of energy shows the flow of energy at each trophic level in an ecosystem. Now, in case you've not noticed, there's a loss of energy occurring at each trophic level. Starting from the producers, energy is transferred from one trophic level to the next. As energy moves through trophic levels, it decreases. At each trophic level, 90% of the original energy is lost. Only 10% of the energy is available to the organism at the next trophic level. This is because the energy is used for respiration, movement, maintaining body temperature, and some parts of the food cannot be digested. So the higher the trophic level, the less energy is available to them. This is why the transfer of energy from one trophic level to another is often not efficient. So food chains usually have fewer than 5 trophic levels because there is significant energy loss at each level. This limited energy supply makes it difficult to sustain higher trophic levels. Therefore, food chains tend to be shorter to maintain an adequate energy flow. It is more energy efficient for humans to eat crop plants than to eat livestock that have been fed on crop plants because energy is lost at each trophic level. When we eat crops directly, we get the energy stored in the plants more efficiently. But when we consume livestock, a lot of energy is lost because it goes through an extra step of transferring from plants to animals. So, by eating crops directly, we save more energy and are more efficient in our food consumption. Using a pyramid of energy is more advantageous than pyramids of numbers or biomass to represent a food chain. The pyramid of energy takes into account the energy loss as it moves up the food chain, providing a more accurate representation of decreasing energy availability at higher trophic levels. This clear depiction of energy flow makes it easier to understand how much energy is available for each level in the food chain. So that concludes part 1 of chapter 19, Organisms and Their Environment. Hope this video helped you. Please share your thoughts and suggestions in the comment section. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe to IGCSE Study Buddy for more biology revision videos. Bye.